What's up everyone, Steven here from Techmaker Studio. This is building a decentralized Twitter clone with React.js and Aleph.im, and I think this is part 9. In this episode, we're going to try to wrap up some problems we were having in the last episode, and the first thing I want to do is add something called React Bootstrap, which I haven't used before, and I kind of just jumped straight into using React the way that I always have in the other apps that I've built in other systems. But we want to actually use this because they make it a lot easier. Let's do a quick scan for React Bootstrap Modal. Because I had seen something from Pluralsight, and I thought this was looking like a pretty easy little tutorial. Whoa, am I about to get advertised something? Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. So I think we've already got Bootstrap added, so I'm gonna just npm install React Bootstrap here. And I don't need to go there, I need to go here. Let's pull this terminal up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and run that command and pause the video for 2 seconds while that finishes. Alright, so if we pop back over to that tutorial, you'll see here that it's prompting us for importing the modal, and then we have it's asking us to import the Bootstrap Min Css. So let's go really quick to our index.js. I want to make sure, but I think I've got I've already got the Bootstrap CSS here. So I should be able to just do this now. And then let's go to our modal file here. And what I'm going to do is at the very top, well, maybe just under post here. Maybe under, I'm not sure where the best place to put that is. Maybe there's fine. Doesn't matter, potentially. So I'm pretty much just going to follow this tutorial, which seems to be really, really simple. Let's try something really fast. Let's just copy this, and let's basically cut. We're going to undo this in a second, but let's just paste this in here, and then save. And then let me fire up my server again. And let's see if it pops up this modal. I just want to make sure this is actually working before we commit to trying to detail it out with our existing stuff. Because, oh, there it is. Looks like I've got the text. It's just white for some reason. Okay, cool. So that does, in fact, work. So now what we need to do is basically merge that style into our existing modal here. You know, in actual fact, I'm just scanning through this. We really don't have much in here that's custom yet. So let me copy this again, and let's paste this above. And let's just use, they're going to freak out on us here. Let me just put a little div and then put everything inside of it. Basically, you can only return one top level element, and then when we pasted that in, we had 2, so we'll delete this div at the end, but that way we don't have a bunch of red text hanging out. Okay, so modal header, I'm assuming that's this. So I don't even know if we need a modal header. Let's just axe that. Modal body, let's copy this. Well, you know what? What we need to do is say tx in progress. Let me think for a second. Let's go ahead and cut this. Let's paste it here. Let's untab that back like that. And then what we can do instead of this div, did I miss something? I missed something. Modal content, modal title. So what I'm basically going to do is just copy this modal body. Oh, I'm going blind apparently. There we go. I fixed that, and then let's put the closing div here. No problem. And then for the footer, we're just going to copy this. So essentially what this is a pre-baked set of components for React that makes our life a little bit easier and lets us follow. This is something I was kind of complaining about in the last video, is we can't follow this style of sort of just telling it what state it should have. So this is really nice to just be able to say show equals true or false here. So we'll look at that in just a second, but let me go ahead and get rid of all this. And then, as I said, let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of this. And then tab everything back one. And fix that. Okay, so let's save that and let's go see what it looks like. Okay, so we don't have our slider, which we shouldn't. Let me just do a good refresh here. Is there any text up here? Doesn't look like it. This is the footer. Post something. We don't need. Where the heck did that? This is the. Oh, I left some stuff hanging out up here. I missed that entirely. And then there we go. Now we're talking. So real quick, let's review exactly what's happening. So if we go into our post.js, we have this on message. Whenever we get a message with the same address as our wallet address, meaning it came from us, we're saying, hey, we just received something from ourselves. And then I believe that's calling back up into app. Yes, app.js. Is that around here somewhere? User post received. And then this is kind of where we were starting to get a little bit stuck. So what we need to do is say, you know what? What we can actually do is pass. I'm just kind of thinking about this in terms of what the easiest thing is. What we could do is pass the user post received in here. User post received equals user post received. And then what we could do is say, well, that's going to get weird because, well, let's keep going with it. Let's keep going with it. Sorry. Just kind of thinking this idea through in real time here. So user post received. So what we could do is the modal could be props.user post received. And that should be false by default, I think, in app.js. Okay, so we're setting that to false by default. So we refresh over here. And actually, I think it was already loaded. Okay, what if we set this to be true? We should see this showing up automatically. Cool, so that's working. So now what we need to do, and this is going to be kind of interesting. I'm going to put these on new lines. Again, like the naming conventions here is what's throwing me off, and I'm thinking a little bit ahead. But what we could do is say set user post received equals set user post received. And we're passing this into, we actually need to pass this into the navbar, I think. Yeah. So this is weird to me because we're kind of splitting up this functionality and passing it into a bunch of random places. And I need to pass that up here in the actual navbar as well. Okay, so save that, save that. Actually don't need that on multiple lines yet. Let's go to our create post button. This thing, we're no longer going to rely on the sort of default Bootstrap stuff that we normally do. What we're going to do instead is say on click, and then we'll call something along the lines of open modal. And then we can create a function up here, const open modal equals function. And then what we want to do is say props.set user post received, and then we'll pass in true, and then we should take in the event and then say e.prevent default. So this is kind of, and actually we should set it to, I'm thinking about this wrong now. Set user post received to true. Let's just try this. I don't think this is going to work for some reason. The logic has gotten tangled in my head. No, now it works. So that naming is weird though, because we're actually saying, hey, mark it as though we have received a post. But let's test it. So we need to come up with a better name, but let's test it here. So we'll say testing the post button. And so we'll post, and then it's going to break. Cannot read properties of undefined address. You know what? That's because I need to, well, my wallet wasn't connected. I'm going to go out on a limb and say my wallet wasn't connected. So let's try this again. Trying the post button UX update post. It's going to ask me to sign here. We'll sign. Okay, so it's not exactly doing what we want, but it did get more in the direction of what we want. So before we even try to fix anything, I want to fix this naming because it's super confusing right now. I know what I was originally trying to do, but I'm not really vibing with it now. So what we want to do is in here, what we really want to do is say, okay, when we receive a message, set the modal to be closed. Basically, we want to close the modal. So we should say something like set modal open, and it's false, maybe. We're going to have to see how this tracks. Okay, but say it's false. And then let's come into our app.js here, and we'll say modal open, and then modal open, set modal open, and it's false by default. And then down here, we need to replace all of these with set modal open, set modal open, and then we'll copy that. Do I need that again? I'm not sure. Let's do, yeah, I need it here. And then down here, we'll say modal open, modal open. So let's go, what line is that? 33, I have another thing. If modal, I don't need any of this. So we're getting rid of all of that fancy stuff for the moment. Then what we're going to do is go into our modal here and say props.modal open. Okay. And then the only time the modal should be open is to say, so first of all, we need to pass this through our navbar. Where was that? Set modal open. So hopefully this naming is making a little bit more sense. We're directly saying this is what we're trying to do, and we're going to make that props. And then here, I'm going to say set modal open to be true. And then if we give it a good refresh, which I keep saying this, we probably don't need to do it. I had to do it the other day for some reason, and I don't remember. So let's do a quick test again. Post. It's going to tell me to sign. And you kind of, okay, so that actually worked better that time. So you see that, like, it showed us the progress bar for just a second, and then it hid. Okay, so we're going in the right direction. I'm going to make this just say post something because I'm tired of seeing launch demo modal. And then let's have a look at our post.js. So this is really the last thing I'm going to try to knock out here is what happens, how do we handle like the actual like UX. So what I had started doing, if we look down, well, let's look at the actual modal. We have this TX in progress, and if the TX is in progress, we show this. Otherwise, we show that. And I'm actually thinking that the modal body, I need to do something. This is kind of crazy. I need to move the modal body out here, I think. I don't know. That's really weird. I've got a weird thing going on here. Maybe what I can do is actually replicate this in here, because I think this progress bar needs to also be in the modal body is the point. So in one case, we put the modal body alone with the progress bar. Otherwise, we do this. Okay, that makes more sense like that. In any case, we're basically doing this on this TX in progress. And what we should be doing is probably something like there's a TX that's been triggered. Okay, so like when you click the button to submit the form down here, we should probably say, okay, you just triggered a transaction. So instead of doing that down here after, because I think what's actually happening is that when we get this TX back, it's saved to the network already. So it kind of just flickers and goes away. What we want to do is actually start the loading animation like here. So we could say, and we could use the same TX in progress thing. It doesn't matter. But let's look at this like that. Maybe the naming will be better differently because it implies that there's a real transaction in progress. But let's go ahead and say post something. Post something. And if we click post, you'll see now we have this loading thing, right? And what we basically want to do is have it actually animate and like start animating a little bit early. So it could start like over here at 25% and have some kind of like little animation going like it's about the process. And then once we click sign, we would want it to continue on, maybe, or maybe it just, I don't know. We can get fancy or not. The only thing we haven't handled is what happens if we click cancel. So if we click cancel, we're actually stuck here. So what we want to do is, instead of doing a wait right here, what I'm going to do is say post.submit, and then I'm going to do .catch error. And all I'm going to do here is say set TX in progress false. And let's see what this does. And I'm going to give it a refresh here again out of pure habit. All right, post something. Let's click post and click cancel. And now we're back to having our message here. Testing, post, cancel, testing this again, post, and let's actually submit it, sign. And then you see like once it goes through, boom, here it is. So now you can actually see better, I think, what I'm trying to accomplish with, well, that's no good. So what we need to do is something like dot then result, and we can actually do set tx in progress false in both cases. But I think you get the sense now maybe of what I want the UX to be. So the whole idea is like, okay, if we, I don't think it thinks I'm signed in. That's a bug we need to figure out. So we post, oh no, we would change our mind, cancel. Okay, now we can type again. Working on this new UX still. Okay, we post. So now this thing's kind of loading. We click sign. All right, so that's also not what we want to do. I think we don't want this. So what I want to happen is for that to continue to load all the way across. When the post finishes, it hides. That's the main idea. Where is our... So our modal... I'm wondering if I can trigger this set tx in progress later, because that's basically the last little bit that would make this really nice. So in the next video, we're going to work on the design, because I want this to be better across the board. I want it to look really good. And maybe the next couple of videos are going to be that. And in the process, we'll make this animation look legit. Right now, it's just kind of getting the bones in place and the workflow in place. But in any case, what I want to do is have this be set tx in progress false later. Maybe what we could do... I'm just trying to think, how can we connect that? So props modal open. We could do this. This kind of seems kind of hacky to me, but let's try this. Let's do use effect, and I'm going to have to import use effect up here. We're going to say use effect, and what we want to do is listen to props dot modal open, and then say if props dot modal open, what we can do... So what this is doing is saying listen for changes to the modal open variable, and if that is indeed open, set the tx in progress to false. So what this is basically saying, if it works, let's see if it works, and then I'll explain it. That's going to be my new motto. Try it and see if it works, and then explain it. Okay, so let's click post something. Okay, post. I need to do a real refresh here. We need to figure out what's going on with that. Post something. Post. Cancel. Okay, we're back. Post. And sign. Okay, so now you see that. So in reality, what we want to see, that loads all the way across, and then it fades away. Poof, our new thing is here. So now what we want, though, is for when we click post something, for the form to be there. So it is. So I think what is happening now is we've got this use effect in place. We're listening to this modal open on the parent. And then we're saying if the modal is actually open, set the tx in progress to false. And this is just basically resetting it, because what had happened was it got left in this stale state. The modal closed when our new data came through. We could make this more complicated, but I'd rather not talk to any other components just to change this little thing. So I think this is fine. Like basically, we can tell from this use effect here that, hey, we're trying to open the modal. If you're trying to open the modal, just set the tx in progress to be false, because in what situation would you want to open the modal and see a progress bar? Yeah, so I think this is gonna be kind of cool. I'm feeling pretty optimistic. Seems like it's working now. Post, sign that thing, and then poof, here it is. So it's really, it's going to come together. So the next thing, obviously, as I said, is we're going to work on the design and get the structure like really tight and kind of make sure the UX feels good. Then we're going to switch over to our own custom data model that we're going to use for this project. Yeah, and we'll just keep going. So I think, like, I've been thinking about a lot of stuff with regard to this, because like when you think about Twitter, you know, you're obviously going to want to have comments and likes and retweets and all this kind of stuff, or reposting, or however we're going to call it. So there's some aspects of that, you know, the queries will be insanely slow if we try to just use like the native Aleph approach. Aleph is doing a lot of work with indexers on different platforms, which we won't get into today as far as what that is exactly, but we may end up, or I may even do this offline or in a different video series because it'll be kind of complicated. We're going to build this out sort of with the basic data structure that makes sense, like sort of the what you might call like normalized data. And then we may end up creating some, for lack of a better word off the top of my head, like indexers that cache certain things for you as a user, so that when you load the screen, we can actually show some other stuff in a kind of responsive, dynamic, quick way. Because otherwise, we're going to make the slowest app in history. So anyway, a lot of stuff to think about. This is going to be a really interesting project. We're going to be working on it for a while. I hope you're enjoying it so far. If you are, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with all your friends. And I'll talk to you in the next episode.